I'm here on a special day. I was supposed to have a day off. I'd only come in for the Vice President of the United States because right now is my nap time.
I'll try not to fall asleep during this interview.
Do you nap at all?
Not really. I wish I could. I don't mind, like in a different life, sometimes on a Sunday afternoon. Yeah.
I know. Look what you... By the way, I'm playing Bat Dance because I knew you were a Prince fan.
Yes.
But I believe, I'm a huge Prince fan, but I believe that the Batman soundtrack was his best work. It was genius. Yes. Think about it. Listen to this.
Go with a smile.
You didn't do it for you.
No. I mean, like, obviously, like 1999, I thought was spectacular. You can go back to his early days.
Yeah.
But like him on the guitar, there was just nothing like it. And so many people have, even you look at Bruno Mars today, right?
Right.
Who just been influenced by Prince. The night he passed, Doug and I were in LA and actually just, like, he and I have very different musical tastes, my husband and I.
Yeah, what's Doug into? Like Cream
like
or?
Depeche Mode.
Depeche
He's
Mode.
just, that's him.
All
I grew up kind of hip hop. But Prince is the one intersection where we both love. And we just played Prince all night long. We danced, we sang his songs. That was our little tribute.
Did you ever meet Prince in real life?
I never met him in real life.
Wow. I went to see him. This is such a weird story. Forget me. Forget my stories.
Tell me, though. I want to hear it.
Well, it's very strange because I was a huge Prince fan like you.
Yeah.
And a friend called me who had worked on a book with him of pictures. And they said, Prince is going to perform for about 150 people. Come over. And I said, I'm going.
Yeah.
Go over. He comes out and he announces to the crowd, turn off all the lights. And he's playing in the dark the entire time. I left. I said, this is ridiculous. I could listen to this on the radio.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't want to be seen.
And he wanted you to feel it with your ears and your spirit instead of your eyes, right?
But ridiculous. I'm finally going to see Prince.
What time of night was it? He was famously a night owl.
It was early. It was early. Yeah, it was an early session. It was like a special promotional thing. It makes me think of you because you've said sort of running for office, even when you ran, as a DA or attorney general, it was like you said, I don't like talking about myself. Yeah. It feels I was raised not to be a narcissist. And here the other guy is so only talking about himself. Yeah. But it's weird. It's odd for you to talk about your accomplishments and sort of congratulate yourself.
I just have always, again, you're right. I was raised this way. It's not about you. It's about what you do. Right. And so it is. It feels immodest to me to talk about myself, which apparently I'm doing right now.
Right. But you have to, right?
Yeah,
this is like you're running for office.
And a friend of mine actually said, look, this is not a time to worry about modesty because this is, obviously you got to let people know who you are.
When you said you don't nap, I get it because like what you've taken on is extraordinarily difficult. And I mean, do you feel the pressure of the moment in the sense that, like when I met you out in the hall, I said, I'm really nervous because I want this to go well for you. I want it to go well for the country. Even when I watch them on Saturday Night Live with the where they have Maya Rudolph playing you, I hate it. I don't want you being made fun of. There's too much at stake. I believe the entire future of this country right now. I mean, as America, land of the free, home of the brave, I think it's literally on the line.
I agree with you.
And when I see them, how did you react to the Saturday Night Live bit?
Well, I just saw it actually, and it was funny. I am a huge fan of Maya Rudolph's. I think she put a lot of time into doing the piece and the character. But to your point, I literally lose sleep and have been over what is at stake in this election. I mean, honestly, I end the day pretty much every day these days asking myself, what can I do more?
Yeah. And what can you do?
Stakes are so high.
You're going out. You're coming here. You went on The View this morning.
Yeah.
You're going to the shows. You did 60 Minutes. By the way, I thought what was so amazing about 60 Minutes is the fact that Trump turned it down.
Yeah.
I mean, it just says so much. He didn't want to be fact-checked. This is maddening. This is insanity. What do you mean you don't want to be fact-checked?
I think that, Howard, people ask me, like, what do you think is going on and what is the tension here? What's at stake? And there are many things, and I can be much more articulate than what I'm going to say. But ultimately, I do believe that this is an election that is about strength versus weakness.
Yeah.
And weakness as projected by someone who puts himself in front of the American people and does not have the strength to stand in defense of their needs, their dreams, their desires, the work that must happen to make sure that we are a secure nation, that we are nurturing and protecting our alliances around the world, that we are supporting America's military, that we are fighting to bring the cost of living down for working families, that we are building businesses, building growth.
Did you ever think in your lifetime you would see a Republican not supporting NATO and wanting to disassemble NATO? I mean, what world are we living in?
And
This
NATO,
is all weird.
NATO, which is the greatest military alliance the world has ever known.
It's what my
you want
father's
to talk about strength?
Yeah.
That is strength to embrace that alliance as America, as Americans. And he would walk away because he admires dictators.
Well, what did you
more
think?
Than he does.
What did you think of this thing
allies.
that just came out today? That Bob Woodward's book was saying that Trump was sending COVID tests to Putin, and Putin said, "Don't let anyone know." I mean, what is going on? What do you make of that?
So I actually said it even in the debate. I believe that Donald Trump has this desire to be a dictator. He admires strong men, and he gets played by them because he thinks that they're his friends.
Yeah.
And they are manipulating him full time and manipulating him by flattery.
Yeah.
And with favor. And so in the midst, to your point, as reported by Bob Woodward, in the height of the pandemic, and remember, and your listeners will remember, people were dying by the hundreds.
Yeah.
Everybody was scrambling to get these kits, the tests, the COVID test kits.
You couldn't get them.
Couldn't get them.
Right.
Couldn't get them anywhere.
Right.
And this guy who is president of the United States is sending them to Russia, to a murderous dictator for his personal use?
We only wish Putin would have gotten COVID and dropped dead.
Well,
I wish that.
Well, the point being, that is just the most recent, stark example of who Donald Trump is, that he secretly sent COVID test kits for the personal use of Putin, of Russia, an adversary to the United States, when he was talking about Americans should be putting bleach in their blood. Think about what this is. Think about this person who wants to be president again, who secretly is helping out an adversary when the American people are dying by the hundreds every day and in need of relief. And instead, how did he handle it domestically from Americans? He mismanaged the whole thing.
This is what keeps me up at night. I don't understand how my fellow Americans, I don't even understand how this election is close. And yes, I'm voting for you, but I would also vote for that wall over there rather than a guy who says, where do I begin? A guy who says he doesn't support Ukraine wouldn't get on that stage with you and say, I support Ukraine. And why do my fellow Americans want this kind of chaos overseas? Why?
To your point, doesn't support our friend Ukraine, doesn't support, therefore, something America should always, and has always, by the way, been a champion of, which is the importance of sovereignty and territorial integrity, which means the importance of standing against anyone who tries to take another nation by force.
Right.
That's what we stand for as Americans, that you don't do that. And if you do that to our friends, we're going to stand with our friends. You're getting played. And some would say, look, I grew up in the neighborhood. Some would say you're getting punked.
Yeah.
If you stand in favor of somebody who's an adversary over your friends on principles that we all agree on. And you look at it, it's not only that. He says he's going to be a dictator on day one. Understand what dictators do. They jail journalists. They put people who are protesting in the street in jail.
He said he thinks he wants to go after Jimmy Kimmel, a comedian. He wants to go after Stephen Colbert and Seth Meyers. Even if someone had said years ago when I remember presidential races, if someone said, "Oh, Kamala Harris isn't a black woman," they would have been out of the. They would have been out of the. Yeah. That would have been it. Would have been over. I mean, how do you challenge that? What do you do with that?
But back to the point about what it actually is, and then let's talk about it and call it what it is. It's a sign of weakness in a leader to not stand in defense of your people, the American people. It's a sign of weakness in the commander-in-chief of the United States of America to not stand on the side of supporting your military. Don't forget Donald Trump calling members of our military prisoners of war, suckers and losers.
John McCain, he doesn't like him.
Absolutely.
Because he got captured.
He says he doesn't like him because I don't like people who got caught. A prisoner of war, an American hero.
Yeah.
Think about this guy who, by the way, his former chief of staff, 2 secretaries of defense, his national security advisor, people who served with Donald Trump in the White House, have said he is unfit to be commander-in-chief and is dangerous. So the people who know him best have let us know. They've seen him. They've worked with him in the Oval Office, and they know he is dangerous and unfit to be president of the United States.
His own vice president isn't voting for him.
That's exactly right.
How could anyone justify any of this? I don't get it. It's madness. And I know Donald Trump so many years. He was at my wedding.
Mm-hmm.
I always had a good time with him, but not as president of the United States. You can't come out with these wacky eating cats and dogs. And now these poor people who are living in these communities are getting threatened.
You know, Howard,
you can't dine with Nazis. You can't do it.
The thing about the cats and dogs, and again,
did you when you were doing the debate?
Yeah.
What was going through your mind when he said the cats and dogs? Did you say to yourself, I just won this thing. This guy's self-destructing. Did you say it to yourself, or did you not know in the moment?
There were a couple of moments, at least in the debate, where it was surreal. Honestly.
Right.
We're in a debate before it turned out, I think, 60 million Americans who are tuning in, meaning they're not dealing with all of their other priorities because they want to hear a debate about who will be the next president of the United States. And they want to know, where do they stand on the issues and how will they lead and how will they make a difference in my life?
Right.
And one of those two people, Donald Trump, on that stage spent time talking about how people are eating pets. One of those people on stage spent full time talking about his personal grievances, about himself full time, instead of talking about the needs of the American people. And there were moments when I was on that debate stage where I was, I knew what he does at his rallies, but this was a very serious moment to earn the votes of the American people. And he was talking about things that were factually untrue and quite ridiculous, but also not talking about a plan for dealing with bringing down the cost of groceries, not talking about a plan for building up American businesses, not talking about a plan for strengthening America's security and standing with our allies and against our adversaries.
When I was watching the debate, what drove me nuts, and I was there debating with you, I was like, say that. And you said it. You said, well, this guy is talking, his big issue is immigration. Okay, fair enough, there's an immigration problem. And you made the point. You said, it's great that you're for immigration, but we had this fantastic bill that would have secured the border. Correct. Republicans and Democrats did it together, but you picked up the phone and called the Republicans and said, reject your own bill. Now, when you say something like that, you'd think it would be the end of the discussion. The guy put his campaign ahead of, we could have solved this big problem. We would have had the resources, the money, everything.
Yep.
And yet somehow during the debate, it somehow just goes away. To me, it should be like, we don't move on until we answer that. Why did you cancel the bill?
And Howard, to your point, the bill is and would have been the strongest border security bill in years. It would have put 1,500 more border agents at the border. I've been down to the border. Those border agents are working around the clock. They need help. Right. They need support. And this bill would have done that. In fact, the Border Patrol agents have supported the bill. It would have stemmed the flow of fentanyl. I'm traveling our country, meeting with mothers and fathers and children of people who have died because of fentanyl. This would have put the resources into stemming the flow of fentanyl coming into our country, killing Americans.
Yeah.
It would have done work to allow us to go after transnational criminal organizations. I am a former prosecutor, as you know. I have prosecuted transnational criminal organizations who are trafficking in guns, drugs, and human beings. This is not theoretical for me. I know what they do, and we should have the resources to go after them.
Don't you want to say to the people who support him, what are you not hearing? Are you not hearing that we had a bill to solve this big problem? You're all afraid of this. We understand that. I hear these interviews with people who are voting in the other direction, and I don't understand. There's no, it's all chaos. It doesn't make any sense to me. Speaking about being a district attorney and a prosecutor, I'm curious about that phase of your life.
Yeah.
So you go to law school, and really it's sort of against all odds, but what's fascinating to me is you get out of law school and you get a job as a prosecutor.
Yeah, in Alameda County. The seat is Oakland, California.
And what is it? What prepares you to go? In other words, at first I assume you go in front of a jury, and they give you some kind of easy case. I'm hoping, like maybe
you start with DUIs. Usually.
DUIs.
Yeah.
Were you a wreck the first time out of law school, and you go in front of a real jury, in front of a real judge, and you have to prosecute, even though it's a DUI? What is that moment like for you?
So I started by the first case I actually prosecuted was when I was a certified law clerk. So I won the case. But the great thing about, just pushing people out when they're young, they don't know any better.
You weren't nervous?
I was nervous and I was probably over-prepared, but I believed in my case. And, the great thing about being a prosecutor, and I've talked with many prosecutors over the years all over the country, is you only got one job, which is to do the right thing.
Right.
And so you have to believe in your case. And frankly, if you don't believe in your case, you shouldn't be bringing your case, right? You shouldn't be charging a case unless you believe this person is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt and you have the evidence to prove it. You shouldn't be making decisions based on emotion. You should be making decisions based on facts and the law.
Right.
So I believed in my case, but that work actually, I had a mentor, Dick Eichelhart, who actually hired me as a prosecutor right out of law school. And I was just telling somebody. So the interview, you want to know what the interview was like?
Yeah.
So I go into this courthouse. It's the storied courthouse in Oakland, California. And I go up to the 9th floor and I go into this office and there are a bunch of wooden chairs. And there are these guys who are behind the desk and in these chairs around. One's got his leg up, his foot up on the seat of the chair, leaning over. All these guys. And I'm sitting in this little wooden chair. And they're asking me all these questions. It's my big interview. You know what the questions were from? Remember that game Scruples?
Yeah. That was the question?
That was my interview. So asking you things like, well, if you were a poor student and in an apartment, and then your neighbor says, hey, I gotta hook up on cable. And you know, would you do it if you don't have to pay for questions like that? But that's how I started my career as a prosecutor. But the career, believing in the work, obviously.
But the career really started. Your mom, single mom, you know, working hard. We've read a lot about your mother.
Yeah.
Bright woman, scientist, chemist.
Yeah.
Father was also an academic.
Yeah.
You know, bright people.
Yeah.
But your mother moves you to Montreal, I think it was, in Canada?
When I was in high school, well, just before high school.
Yeah. So when you're there, one of your friends was sexually molested by a relative.
Her stepfather.
Yeah. And it was then you knew you wanted to go to law school because you wanted to be the person that people turned to when they were in dire straits.
I always knew I wanted to go to law school. I mean, some of my heroes were people like Thurgood Marshall, you know, who understood the power of the law to take the passion from the streets to the courtrooms. But when I decided I wanted to be a prosecutor, a big part of it had to do with Wanda's experience. And I just felt like there has to be, and I want to be part of a system that is protecting vulnerable people.
Yeah.
And
it's
I
public service.
Yeah, it is. And I don't know, I've always, maybe I'm the eldest of 2 kids. You know, when I was 2 years, starting from when I was 2 years old, my mother would say, look after your sister. You know, it's an instinct of mine to want to protect people.
But I think that's what people need to know. Certainly to me, you know, public service is such a great thing. But when you graduate law school and, you know, you have to pay a lot of money to go to law school.
Yeah.
The temptation is to take a big corporate job.
Yeah, that wasn't for me.
Yeah, but that's the difference. Yeah. That's another thing I really like about you. And, you know, when you first become, okay, you know, you start with these DUIs and stuff. Yeah. But, you know, being a DA, then suddenly a prosecutor, you start to take on gangs.
Yes.
You've written that you had to face a guy who scalped his girlfriend.
Yeah.
Scalped his girlfriend.
Yeah.
Gang guys.
Yeah.
Did you fear for your life? Did your mother even say to you, what are you doing? You went to law school. It's a scary profession, right? It's no nonsense.
I mean, I've always been clear-eyed about what's involved. And yeah, there are threats and all of that. But the good that you can do standing in front of a jury and saying to that jury that this mother's child should not have been killed.
Yeah.
To say that this person who is engaged in human trafficking should pay a consequence. To say that, you know, that people should receive dignity and that there has to be serious consequence for serious crime. I think that's some of the most important work that anyone can do, which is to require that we have a society that does not allow, in particular, for violence and that kind of behavior to go without consequence, serious consequence.
It's really weird, too, because to me, you're the law and order candidate. And yet they try to paint you like you're some leftist who I don't know, who wants to have people running through the streets committing crimes. You were a prosecutor.
I have put a lot of people in jail. I have personally prosecuted everything from, you know, child sexual assault to homicides. And then as Attorney General, transnational criminal organizations, which I took on as a leader.
But talk, you know, the story that got me was this 6-year-old girl when you were a prosecutor.
Yeah.
It was a 6-year-old girl who you felt would not be able to recount to the jury the abuse that was going on in her home.
Yeah.
And you had to walk away. You had to say to yourself, oh God, I can't put this kid through it. She won't win the case. And knowing she's going to go home to this father or whatever it was, stepfather, who was abusing her. That kind of work, you take it home. I mean, it has to eat at your soul.
It does.
Because you probably went home that night and said, that little girl's in the house with her abuser.
It was one of the most difficult cases I've ever handled. I, to this day, remember exactly when I realized that was what was going to happen. To this day, I remember where I was. I remember exactly how I felt. And I still think about that and her. You know, as a prosecutor, I would go up to the parents of homicide victims, would have a meeting every Thursday evening. And no DA had gone up there. And I would go up and join them for their meetings.
Wow.
And talk with them about, and basically figure out what we needed to do more to figure out who the killer of their child was and to be able to then bring those cases to justice. I think it's very important that we all agree that as a society, there has to be a serious consequence for the one person killing another human being, a woman being raped, a child being molested. There has to be serious consequence. And that's the work I've always done for the majority of my career. And I feel very strongly about it. And I think that people should be able to live in a society where they feel safe. I think of safety as a civil right. And all people have the right to be safe. Because think about a society that doesn't have that, where then people are constantly worried about something unexpected happening to them. That's not going to be a productive society.
So when you went after gang members, I'm talking about people who traffic drugs and this and that kind of thing. Were you ever directly threatened by these people? They said, hey, you better just shut this down or you're going to get it?
I've definitely had death threats.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't generally talk about them, but yes.
Why don't you talk about them? Because you don't want to encourage any kind of nuts out there? Or is it because it's just too hard to confront?
I refuse to live in fear of the bad guys.
Yeah. Well, it's very brave.
I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that.
Does it infuriate you too that, first of all, something drives me nuts with Obama's presidency. He had the opportunity to appoint someone to the Supreme Court. Mitch McConnell goes, F you, you're not appointing anyone to the Supreme Court, basically. You're the sitting president of the United States. The basic unfairness of that makes me insane. It makes me feel like America's going down the tubes. How can this be? The president could not appoint a Supreme Court justice, and now we have a Supreme Court. You know what? You want to get an abortion? You don't want to get an abortion? I trust any woman to make that decision for herself. What is this? I don't want Donald Trump and his party deciding. I don't want Clarence Thomas deciding.
But here's the thing that is, again, really important that people understand about who Donald Trump is. He hand-selected 3 members of the United States Supreme Court to do exactly what they did. Take away the right of an individual to make decisions about their own body. Like, I ask people to take a step back. Let's just think about it this way. Whatever your gender,
right?
And it's not about abortion. You have basically now a system that says you as an individual do not have the right to make a decision about your own body. The government has the right to make that decision for you. So regardless of how you feel about abortion, think about what that means. You know, the strength of America includes that we have been committed as Americans, it's part of our spirit, to the expansion of rights.
Right.
And for the first time, we're seeing a restriction of rights, fundamental rights, including what could be more fundamental than to make decisions about your own body. And that's what has happened. And Howard, to your point, look, this issue is not about trying to convert people, right?
Right.
Because one does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree.
Right.
The government shouldn't be telling her what to do with her body. She will talk with her priest, her pastor, her rabbi, her imam, but not the government.
Well, here's what I worry about. You got a guy who says probably you don't really need to vote if I win. You got a guy who says, hey, we're not stopping here. You know gay rights are next.
Yeah.
You know it.
But Clarence Thomas said it.
Yep. I mean, who doesn't have, here's the crazy thing to me. Who doesn't have gay people in their life? Whether it's your kid, whether it's your best friend, the genie is out of the bottle, guys.
And to your point, think about it. So I actually was proud to perform some of the first same-sex marriages as an elected official in 2004.
Right.
Okay. A lot of people have evolved since then, but back in 2004. Here's how I think about it. We actually had laws that were treating people based on their sexual orientation differently. So if you're a gay couple, you can't get married.
I didn't use the N-word. Let's be very clear.
Niggers and chinks? Nigga. Nigger.
I didn't use the N-word. Let's be very clear.
Nigger.
Now, you want to apologize, you say to the niggers.
Nigger out.
We were basically saying that you are a second-class citizen under the law, not entitled to the same rights as a couple who are consenting adults in a loving relationship. You, therefore, when one of you is sick, when one, God forbid, passes away, will not have the same legal rights. We were saying literally you're a second-class citizen under the law. And now you see the court that Donald Trump created that is openly talking about what else could be at risk. And understand, if Donald Trump were to get another term, most of the legal scholars think that there's going to be maybe even 2 more seats that'll be up. That means, think about it, not for the next 4 years, for the next 40 years, for the next 4 generations of your family, what might be a Supreme Court that is about restricting your rights versus expanding your rights.
What do you think, too, of these judges basically saying whatever Trump does in office is okay, including assassinating his opponents, because he's doing it for the good of the country? What the hell is going on here? You're the prosecutor. You're the attorney general. What is going on here? Is this America?
So to your point, that's where everyone, I think, is starting to understand this election is not 2016 or 2020. because that Supreme Court decision just a few months ago basically said to the former president, you will be immune from anything you do in office. Now, this is a guy who has said he'll be a dictator on day one, has said he would weaponize the Department of Justice, take away the independence of the Department of Justice, and put his loyalist in. Somebody who has said literally he would use this word, he uses this word, he would terminate the Constitution of the United States. You know what the Constitution of the United States does? That's the Fourth Amendment against unreasonable search and seizure. That's the Fifth Amendment, which is your right to remain silent. That's the Sixth Amendment, your right to an attorney. And he's going to terminate the Constitution?
Yeah. Let me ask you this. If he wins, God forbid, would you feel safe in this country? Would you stay in this country?
Howard, I'm doing everything I can to make sure he does not win.
Well, what if he does? How can you be safe? He's saying, oh, I'm just going to do whatever the hell I want. This time I know what I need to do.
You know what? All of those former officials from national security, the over 200 Republicans who worked with both Presidents Bush, Mitt Romney, John McCain, who are endorsing me, the former Vice President Dick Cheney, who was voting for me along with his daughter, Liz Cheney. We are building a coalition of people that are Republicans, independents, Democrats, libertarians, all stripes of Americans who are coming together to say, you know what, this election is about putting country before party, that this is about saying, do we want a president who's going to abide by the oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States, or someone who is full-time engaged in flattery from Vladimir Putin of Russia and sending COVID testing kits over to him when Americans are dying every day?
It's remarkable. By the way, you have said something I've been screaming about for years. I believe the United States Postal, I believe you can tell a society by its post office. You go overseas, you can't get a letter. Mm-hmm. The post office here in the United States is so fantastic. We take things for granted. Right now, we're taking for granted how good things are.
You're right.
We really are. And you have said, and I was thinking back to when Trump was president. Remember who he appointed to be in charge of the post office? And remember the chaos at the post office? I couldn't get a letter.
Yes.
That's enough.
Yes.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't get it.
But here's the thing. Let's not throw up our hands. Let's roll up our sleeves. Because this but this is our country. And you know what? If you love our country, we got to fight for our country. We can't take our country for granted. I love our country. I love the American people. And what I see when I'm traveling all over our country is that people are coming together of all different backgrounds based on a common belief that if you love something, you got to fight for it. And that's this moment. That's this moment. And we can have our disagreements, but there's some foundational stuff that we got to agree on. And it includes rule of law. Free and fair elections should not be overturned just because you didn't like the outcome because you lost.
Now, let's talk about that for a second.
Okay.
How crazy. How do you vote for someone who says, if I win, it was a fair election? If I lose, Kamala Harris and her buddies fixed it. That's delusional. That you can't have that. And you can certainly not storm the Capitol when you're the sitting president of the United States.
In America, we call that a sore loser. And in this case, this is someone who has already lost, which would say that they are actually already a loser.
And how do you vote for someone who says, find me 11,000 votes? What is that? It's on tape.
Yeah.
It's so crazy. When you ran for Senate, it was bittersweet, right? You won, which is great. But you said, I ate a whole bag of Doritos that night. That's your thing, Doritos?
Oh, I love Doritos. It's original nacho. But let me just tell you, it was a family-sized bag.
Wow.
I sat on the couch.
But you're in good shape. Were you like
I work out every morning.
Did you work out this morning?
I did.
Where did you work out?
On the elliptical at the hotel.
Oh, they bring one up to your room?
Yeah.
Nice. How long do you go on the elliptical?
Half an hour to 45 minutes.
You're not bored out of your skull on that thing?
I'm watching a variety of things. That's how I catch
Morning
it.
Joe? He's
sometimes.
Huh?
Yeah.
That Morning Joe.
Uh-huh.
I love that guy.
I do too. Joe Scarborough, yeah.
A former Republican.
Yes.
He can't vote in his own
party.
party.
He loves our country. I don't agree with him on every issue, but we agree on, I think, the most important at this moment for sure.
Why are you eating for breakfast Raisin Bran, I read? I feel that's not, for someone who's healthy and you have a good figure, why Raisin Bran? There's a lot of sugar.
Well, no, so I don't eat Raisin Bran every morning. But if you asked me what was my favorite cereal, I would put it right up there with, okay, now this is going to be obnoxious, and Special K.
Special K is...
Well, it's really great. Plus, my mother used to make these Special K cookies in honor of me.
Can you imagine if your mother was alive and saw her daughter running for president of the United States?
I miss her every day.
She was something, huh?
Yeah, she was very special. All 5 feet of her. You would have loved her. If you met her, you would have thought she was 6 feet tall.
When she worked in a chemical lab and she worked on developing cures for breast cancer.
Correct.
You would go with her as a little girl and clean the test tubes.
That was my first job, and I was awful. She fired me.
She fired because why? You would like those things have to be...
Because I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to clean pipettes. You know.
Was it a weird time in your life? Well, I think a couple of defining moments would be not only going to law school, but even going back in time. Here you're living in Oakland.
Yeah.
And they decide to bus the black kids to the white school. and they put you on a bus and bus you there.
It was actually the Flatlands, Berkeley at the time, but yeah.
But did you see, were kids openly hostile to you? Because I imagine.
When we arrived at school?
Yeah.
I didn't have that experience. In large, let me tell you, maybe this is one of the reasons why. My first grade teacher, Mrs. Frances Wilson, God rest her soul, attended my law school graduation.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yes.
You mean you actually had relationships with your teachers?
Yes, I had relationships. Yes. And
how did you know to do that? How did you know?
It's what she did. And that's what I'm saying. So that, it was like, I love teachers. I really do. They do God's work. Think about it. We don't pay them nearly enough. No. And what is their calling? To teach other people's children. Right? So when you ask me what was that like, what was the environment like, I think it was all of those incredible teachers who they set an example and they created an environment that was welcoming and nurturing. And, I'm very blessed to have been raised and people I talk to who have achieved any level of success. One of the things that I've found to be a theme is that at some point we were each told, be it by a teacher or somebody at your church or your synagogue or a parent, but we were told at some point that we were special. And by the way, we were not particularly special, but somebody told us that and we believed them.
Right. Otherwise you'd be a wreck.
Right. And that's part of, I had the blessing of, in my childhood, especially in those really critical stages of development, to have a teacher like Mrs. Wilson and in an environment that really told all the kids you can be and do anything.
I'm wondering about this. With all this pressure on you right now, and you've got to win, you just have to. I really believe we're in for the darkest skies on the planet. Like the sun's literally going to go out. This is how I feel. Mm-hmm. And God bless you for doing this, because I'm really afraid that good people, bright people are discouraged from going into public service now. They're like, I don't need it. I don't want to be threatened. I don't want to be told that, I'm for science and I'm an idiot. It's the whole thing is crazy. With all the pressure on you, is there you can't go to a therapist, can you, and say, "Hey, I want to unload a little bit
this
here."
This is my form of therapy right now.
With me, no, but seriously, because there's still that one taboo in politics. If you go to a therapist, you're weak and you're probably insane. And to me, going to a therapist means you're sane, like you're trying to work on yourself. I only wish Donald would go.
Yeah.
I don't know how easily you cure that narcissism at this point. Yeah. But could you go and talk to someone like a therapist and get therapy?
Well, let me just tell you, I have the great fortune of having a really incredible group of friends. My best friend from kindergarten is still one of my best friends.
Really?
Yeah. I have an incredible husband. And so I do have people in my life that I can talk to. And one of the things I advise others is, especially younger people, I mentor a lot of people, men and women.
What do you mean by that? When you mentor someone, like a young kid comes to you and says, gee, I'm thinking of going to law school, or I'm lost, or...
well, just people I'll meet along the way who will express to me some goal or some desire they have, and I'll just make sure that I follow up with them. And one of the things I say, and I believe, is that we should be conscious of the fact that there are certain choices we can make. And one of them is about who we choose to be in our life, in our inner circle. And so choose to have people in your life, in that inner circle, who are supportive of you and who will encourage you. People who, when you trip, will laugh with you when you trip, but then pick you back up and push you back out.
Why do we attract so many people who aren't like that? And why are we attracted to them? I do that all the time. I go, what am I doing with this person?
You have to be conscious of it. You have to be conscious of it, to be very rudimentary. Like, choose not to have mean people in your life.
Yeah. But it seems like the country's so angry right now.
Well, I think that we should remember the good. And I don't mean to sound naive, but we have to remember the good. We have so many hardworking, good people who I have the great experience of meeting every day. For example, one of my passions is small businesses. So my mother worked full time. She worked long hours, and we lived on a nursery school above a child care center. And the woman who owned that, Mrs. Shelton, we called her our second mother. She helped my mother raise us. She was a small business owner. I grew up as a child knowing small business owners. They are leaders in the community. They hire locally. They mentor. So I have a real passion for small businesses. Wherever I go around the country, I try to visit small businesses. I'm telling you, Howard, around our country, all these people who are innovative, ambitious, they are optimistic, they are building, they are creating, they are obviously contributing to our economy. This is the spirit of the American people. We are ambitious and we are aspirational.
I mean, you guys introduced that infrastructure bill, and I mean, there are people building. The economy is doing very well. Yeah, you're right. Prices in every presidential election have been way too high. There's never been an election where we said prices
we
are
need
too
to
low.
work on bringing prices down. I mean, part of my point is we need to go after price gouging.
Right.
I've done that before. You know, we got to go after the bad actors where they exist, especially during emergencies. I mean, these storms and these hurricanes. I've seen it with wildfires in California, where when people are desperate in an emergency, some bad actors will jack up prices. We need to go after them and to stop them from taking advantage of desperate people.
Yeah, there was a guy selling the other day $100,000 watches. From China.
Well, they're going to, in moments of crisis, the predators will come out.
Yeah.
And you got to go after them.
Speaking of your husband,
yes,
was it hard for you because you were so successful at an early age? Being a prosecutor, the DA, attorney general, all of these jobs. Was it hard for you to make a love connection, to make a romance with Doug? Because I would think most men would be intimidated by you.
My husband, Doug, is one of the strongest, most self-actualized men I've known.
You loved him right away, or was it a slow build?
I did. Doug. So let me tell you about Doug. Doug grew up in Jersey.
Oh.
He worked for everything he had. We have a picture of him when he was employee of the month at McDonald's.
And you were at McDonald's.
I worked at McDonald's.
By the way, you can't leave here because I have questions about McDonald's.
Okay, I'll answer anything you have.
Right,
but he worked for everything he has, and he has the best sense of humor. He's very, I don't want to say simple, but he's really clear. He cares about family. He cares about working hard.
Was he a lawyer?
Yeah. He was a lawyer. He started his own law firm.
Is that how you met? Because how do you meet him?
So we met on a blind date. My best friend set us up. That's how we met. And it turned out that we have friends in common that we separately knew, and then it all connected.
Have you ever set anybody up on a blind date? I think it's the most dangerous thing you could do. Maybe even more dangerous.
It's kind of like roulette, right? Like it might hit, it may not. And but look, I think that as people, I'm on the campaign trail. I'm at various things, and people will come up to me. I know you met your husband on a blind date. You got anybody for me?
Well, what he described was he was very nervous around you, left a rambling voicemail.
Yes, he did.
And he was sure that you thought he was a douche and that you were never going to see him again. And yet you hooked up. That was it.
He is, I feel very fortunate to have a husband who is, so he's just secure in his skin. He's not trying to be anything he's not. And, he's an incredible father to the kids. He's an incredible son to my in-laws.
Right.
He's just good people.
Do you think there are people who will not vote for a woman because she's a woman? I mean, I think you're up against that, which just, my best associations in radio and in business have been collaborating with women.
Yeah.
Going back to when I made my movie, I had a female director. And, and when I worked at the E! Network, I had this woman, Franche, who was so fabulous. And there's an energy. And I believe that women, I've said this on the air a million times, women have to work harder to get respect. So they actually go, like in show business, they actually have to go to film school and then intern and then work their way up to become a director. Guys can bullshit their way through it and get away with a lot. And I don't understand this philosophy, especially guys who have daughters and sisters and mothers. What is the bias? I mean, what is it? They think a woman's going to be weak in the White House? I don't know how you combat that, honestly. I don't know what you say to those people.
Listen, I've been the first woman in almost every position I've had.
Yeah.
So I believe that men and women support women in leadership. And that's been my life experience. And that's why I'm running for president.
When you made that call, well, first of all, when you got the call from Joe Biden that said, I want you to run with me as your vice president, were you floored? Were you expecting it?
I didn't know that I was going to get it. And I was obviously put myself out as being open to it. And I was incredibly honored when he reached out to me and offered it to me.
This guy, Tim Walz, I don't know how I'm really curious. Maybe one day you'll write about this, like picking a vice president. Yeah. I mean, here you are running for president. Yeah. And, in an unusual circumstance where Joe Biden just said, okay, I hear you. Which, by the way, I had him on my show. What a loving man.
Yeah, he's such a good person.
He said, for the good of my country, that must have been the hardest thing in the world for him. He had the nomination.
History is going to show it was probably one of the most, one of the rarest moments of any president to do with courage, with the deepest level of courage and love of country.
Where were you when he called you up and said, look, this is my decision and I think I'm going to endorse you? And where are you at that point?
I'm at home. It's a Sunday afternoon in my workout clothes. My niece, her husband, and their 2 daughters were staying with us. And I made pancakes that morning. They were asking for extra bacon. I was getting it for them.
You love to cook.
I love to cook.
Right.
And then we had this puzzle we were working on. And so we went to go work on the puzzle.
Jigsaw puzzle?
Yeah.
You're into that, huh?
Oh, yeah. I love puzzles, especially with kids. It's so fun. So we were working on the puzzle and the phone rings. and it's Joe. And so I got up to take the call, and then life changed.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a call. How long did you talk?
We talked a couple of times that day and that morning. I'd say probably for like half an hour. I mean, the first thing I asked him, to be honest with you, is, are you sure?
I felt bad for him because you know what? He did a damn good job.
Yeah, he did.
He took over
and
in
he's
chaos.
still doing a great job.
Yeah.
He's not done. He's not done.
I know. A terrific guy. And this Tim Walz, I think he's fantastic. When you were at the Democratic Convention, and he gets up with this energy.
Yeah.
Who tells you to, I guess it's a whole think tank, right? Did Obama advise you on your pick for vice president?
No. I made the decision. But
how often did you meet with him before you decide?
Well, I had worked with him because, he's also president of the Governors Association. So we had been working together. And then I obviously met with him to talk with him about considering him for my running mate. And let me just start with saying that there were a lot of incredible candidates. And ultimately, my decision really was just my gut decision, because none of the candidates lack for an incredible level of talent and experience. But the thing about Tim Walz is, people would look at the two of us and think, what could they possibly have in common? He grew up on one side of the country in a rural environment. I grew up on another side of the country in a very urban environment. We just look different. We look like we'd be very different.
Right.
We have so much in common.
Because he's a public servant.
But also, here's the thing, Howard.
Yeah.
He reminds me of the people I grew up with. Different part of the country, maybe different race, but hardworking people, straight talking, grounded in principles.
Great governor.
Yeah, but just good people,
Yeah.
right? Like good, solid, hardworking people. And I just, that was very attractive to me about him.
When Trump was president, I would lay awake at night worrying about the presidency, and I would see people in his cabinet leaving and coming and going. It was like mass chaos. People were like resigning every minute. I believe if you become president, I think you just said too, you're going to put a Republican in your cabinet.
Correct.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's old school.
Look, listen, I know, and I've been a decision maker long enough to know that the best decisions I make are when I bring in a variety of perspectives that allow me to consider every angle and to build consensus. That's the best way as a leader, I believe, you make good decisions.
And yeah, I think so too. And I think as, the more I think about the people that you're going to have in your cabinet and all this kind of thing, I'm guessing it's going to be Liz Cheney who you appoint. Am I correct?
I got to win, Howard. I got to win.
You got to win. You got to win.
And listen, but the thing about Liz Cheney, let me just say, she's remarkable. She's smart. She is a dedicated public servant. She has shown extraordinary courage in this moment where there's such violent, divisive language that she would put herself out so publicly and say, I'm country before party. And, she and I don't agree on everything.
No.
But the fundamentals we do agree on.
But she's saying my one big issue is I believe in democracy and the people's right to vote.
Yeah.
So that's it. That's the decision. And she said, I don't care about particular issues right now. I need a country that's free. And this is the United States of America. If the lights go out here, it's going to be a darkness all over the world. NATO, no NATO.
But to your point, I've now met as vice president over 150 world leaders, presidents, prime ministers, chancellors, and kings. And part of what keeps me up at night is the knowledge based on experience. America is so important to the rest of the world, Howard.
Yeah,
we are so important to the rest of the world.
Yeah.
We are a role model for what it means to be a democracy. So we can look at other countries and our allies and our adversaries and say, these are the principles that must be upheld. And while we uphold these principles, we will also be the strongest economy in the world. We will have the most lethal fighting force in the world. All these things coexist. But you got to have a president who appreciates and understands that. On the issue of the military, we already discussed where Donald Trump is. He belittles the members of our military.
And who's more important than our military? I mean,
but right, you look at the economy. My plans for the economy. Listen, I am a capitalist. I'm also a devout public servant that knows government can't do everything by itself.
Yeah.
My econ policies. Goldman Sachs, the 16 Nobel laureates will tell you that my plans will strengthen our economy. Donald Trump's plans would weaken our economy, would inflate inflation, and would bring a recession on by the middle of next year.
What are these guys up to with mispronouncing your name? They act as if they can't say Kamala. It's not that complicated.
It's just,
what's going on? What really is going on there when they can't pronounce Kamala? Is it supposed to be an insult? Is it like Barack Hussein Obama? Is it some sort of
It's the same
slur?
old tired playbook, Howard. And I think most people are not going to be distracted by it. They want to know you have a plan for bringing prices down.
Right.
They want to know you have a plan for keeping America secure.
Right. So I would sum up your plan. I love the $6,000 tax credit for those with newborns.
Yeah.
And this is a real boom to people. This is stuff that would be, I'm a new grandfather.
I didn't know
I have two grandchildren, but I have
a new one?
A new one, brand new.
Good for you. Congratulations.
And you know what? A $6,000 tax credit is saying you're pro-family.
And what does it do? It allows a young parents to be able to buy a crib, a car seat. That stuff is expensive. The stuff that is so necessary for that incredibly important phase of their child's development. And again, the return on the investment is profound.
Yes.
Pro-family is about taking care of, like I announced today, my plan to make sure that Medicare covers at-home elder care, because probably a lot of your listeners are in that sandwich generation.
Oh my God.
Where they're taking care of young kids and their elder parents.
My mother's 97 years old. I'm not even going to tell you how old I am. I know you think I'm 30, but I am so old. And I have an old mother, 97 years old. The cost is, people don't know this yet. If they're not taking care of somebody elderly, it will bankrupt you.
Absolutely.
It will
or your parent will not get the care they need, or you're going to have to leave your job.
Right.
Which means you're going to reduce your income to, depending on what it is, almost nothing in terms of your household income, to do what you want to do, which is to give your parent the dignity they deserve with care.
And can you imagine if Medicare is impacted, or Obamacare for that matter?
And look at what Donald Trump has been talking about for years, and look at his Project 2025. People should Google it. I mean, what they're doing and what he's talking about in terms of attacking Social Security, Medicare, undoing the Affordable Care Act, and which means the insurance companies can come back and deny people with pre-existing conditions. All of this is very real and very much at stake in this election.
Yeah, I mean, I really do. I hear what you're saying. And you know what even was weird to me? And I'll end on a high note here, or a low note. So Taylor Swift endorsed you. Great. Okay, I don't know if it moves the needle or not, but you need everyone to come into the tent and be part of the party. To say, I hate Taylor Swift because she disagrees with your politics. He's done this to me. When Donald asked me to introduce him at the Republican convention, I said, Donald, I can't. I'm voting for Hillary Clinton. He was very upset with me, and he said, no. And then he hated me. Then I was a bad guy. No longer had ratings. I wasn't funny. I got all the crap for it. How can we have that kind of mentality? I mean, because she disagrees with his politics, he hates her?
I think Donald Trump is an unserious man, and the consequences of him being president again are brutally serious.
Yeah, they really are. Bruce Springsteen, did you watch his endorsement of you?
I did. I was very touched. I'm a huge fan, and obviously Doug is a huge fan from Jersey.
So when you were in college, I'll end on this. I have to understand this. So you're working for Senator Cranston.
Yes.
I remember Senator Alan Cranston.
You do?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. He was one of the early environmentalists.
Yeah. Do you remember Allard Lowenstein too? And all those things? Maybe you don't.
Yeah,
You're younger than I am.
Yeah.
But anyway, you're working at a senator's office and you're working at McDonald's at the same time.
Well, I worked at McDonald's the year before, the summer before.
Oh, okay. I thought, because I was like, well, that is a real, you go to work during the day for Cranston and then you're at McDonald's. Was McDonald's fun at all, or is it really hard work? Is it just a drag?
I mean, it's an experience, right? I mean, I was doing the fries and you got to watch the timer, and it's hard work. But honestly, Howard, I will say in all seriousness, the point about McDonald's for me is also, I was a college kid and it was spending money, right?
Right.
There were people who were working there that was the source of their family's income.
That's right.
Right.
Yep.
And that's the thing that I think that's my takeaway about that experience as much as anything, which is we still got a lot of work to do to make sure that folks cannot just get by, but get ahead. And that's why I'm so committed on what I call an opportunity economy.
I think you'd be a great president. I think you're compassionate. I think you've had all the life experience. I love your experience as a prosecutor. And I want to thank you, because I know I'm getting the high sign. I want to thank you for all the years of public service. I appreciate anyone who really serves the public and serves them in a way. And I know even as a prosecutor, you got people out of jail who were falsely accused.
Oh, yeah.
And that to me says something. Yeah. And I love you as Vice President of the United States. And I just want to encourage anyone who thinks similarly to me to vote. And if you don't agree with me, do not vote. I encourage people not to vote who are thinking in a direction of endorsing Vladimir Putin and all that stuff. I hope people get out and vote. I hope we wake up and just end this nightmare. And go to iwillvote.com and register to vote for Kamala Harris. And I'm very, my mother's beside herself that you're here with me today.
What's her name?
Ray.
Ray.
She goes,
Hi, Ray.
My son is going to interview the Vice President of the United States.
Hi, Ray.
Yeah, I said, Mom, just calm down. She's on so much morphine, she won't even remember I did this. But she'll be all right. Listen, this is fantastic. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
I wish you the best. I know there's a lot of pressure on you. I hope this was fun for you. And I'm sure you're exhausted.
I'm honored to be on your show, Howard Stern.
How did the view go? Was that fun?
It went well.
Whoopi behaved?
Whoopi behaved, and there was some, we had covered some serious topics, some fun topics. So there were two kids in the audience who, during the break, confessed that they were playing hooky.
Wow.
And so I wrote them basically hall passes.
That's great stuff.
There you go.
Well, listen, thanks for doing this.
Thank you.
And thank you for everything.
I appreciate
it's
you.
very
Thank
cool
you for the
you to be
time.
here.
Thank you
Okay.
for the time.
Kamala
Thank you.
Harris, Vice President of the United States, who actually went to see U2 at the Sphere. Was that any
Yes.
good, by the way?
Oh my God. Have you been to the Sphere?
I'm troubled by it.
Well, let me just say basically, everyone should go in with a clear head.
Isn't it too much?
But that's why I'm saying that.
Yeah.
Like definitely go in.
You mean
and
don't be high?
Correct.
Right.
Because it's a lot. Like there's a lot of visual stimulation.
Yeah.
And then I love you too. Actually, it was a surprise for Doug because we have been working and working and working, and he and I both. This is the other one we have in common is you too. And so it was my surprise. He thought we were leaving Nevada from campaigning and heading back to DC. And then we drove up the street to the Sphere.
Wow.
And the band actually came and said hello. But it's extraordinary. You're sitting there and it's almost like Disneyland or Disney World where things just start to change around you.
Wow.
And you feel like you lose a sense of gravity because of it's really phenomenal.
Wow.
Which is also what's interesting about it then is to your point about mics and all this stuff. You don't really need a lot of stage props because the props are all in the Sphere on the monitors.
Right.
You got to go see it. It's really fantastic. It's an incredible work of just technology. Yeah.
And you collect vinyl?
Yeah, I
We
used
have to talk about that
Yeah,
sometime. You
yeah.
have
And then,
to go,
but I collect it for our son Cole too because he's now hip to everything. And so when I try to, so my small business tour, so I try to go wherever I am. Also, if there's a record store,
Right.
and then I'll pick up vinyl for him and bring it back for him.
Well, that's just and just answer this quickly.
Yeah.
Why do you like Formula One? These guys driving around the cars over and over again in a circle.
It's so good.
You really love that.
We love it. Our whole family does.
It's not a campaign
and depending
thing.
on no, God no,
Wow.
no. Well, actually, I haven't been able to watch it a lot recently because I am campaigning. Because also depending on where they're driving, the time of day, you got to
Who
wake
is
up
your
like
favorite driver?
Lewis Hamilton, of course.
I don't even know who that is.
He's leaving Mercedes. You don't know? You don't watch Formula One? No.
I mean,
Once you start, I think you should see it. You might get hooked.
wow.
It's
you
good
don't play
stuff.
golf, do you?
No, Doug
Good.
does. I don't.
Good. I don't want any golfer near the White House. Too much golf. I say if you get the opportunity to be president of the United States, they run off to what is that secret hideaway that Eisenhower built? What's it called?
I don't know because it's secret. What is it?
You know what
Howard?
I'm talking about? Camp David.
Oh yeah, Camp David. Well, historic site. By the way,
You go there?
Donald Trump invited the Taliban there, so
Yeah, wow.
let's put that on that ledger.
My father said if the Americans ever saw Camp David, there would be a revolt in the country. He goes,
I've never been.
You've never been?
No.
God bless you.
Yeah.
You should be president. If you never go to Camp David, that'd be amazing. It really is. Okay. I'm
Okay.
being told you have to go. I love this conversation.
I hope
Thank
to
you
come
so
back.
much.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Anytime.
Thank you.
All right.